Those plants are classified as lethal on 12 inhabited worlds, Professor Celera said. No civilized species consumes them. Ryan Walker stared at the enormous botanical display above the classroom and slowly stopped chewing the end of his pen. He had been half listening for the last 20 minutes, mostly because advanced xenobotanical hazards at 8 in the morning was exactly as exciting as it sounded, but the bright red fruit rotating above Solara's desk had his full attention now. It looked painfully familiar. Celera stood beneath it, tall and composed, her pale teal skin catching the blue light from the projection. Specimen 6 produces capsaicin, a defensive chemical designed to discourage consumption by causing severe sensory distress. Several member species require immediate medical treatment after exposure. Ryan glanced sideways at Tessa, RHYLL. That's a chili pepper. Tessa's violet eyes narrowed. A what? Pepper. Ryan, that is not a food. He looked back at the display. Pretty sure it is. Celera changed the image. Dark green leaves appeared beside a cluster of pale flowers. Specimen 7 contains nicotine, an exceptionally potent botanical defense compound. Direct consumption is strongly prohibited. Ryan sat straighter. Tobacco. The next slide appeared. Small glossy beans, red fruit, waxy leaves. Ryan blinked. No way. Tessa leaned closer. You recognize that one too? Coffee. What does coffee mean? Ryan pointed at the screen. It means half the people in America don't want to talk to you before they've had some. Tessa stared at him. Ryan smiled, expecting her to laugh. She didn't. Around them, students had begun turning in their seats. Celera noticed. Mr. Walker, is there something you would like to contribute? Ryan felt 20 pairs of alien eyes settle on him. Great. 3 months at Helix Interstellar Academy, and he'd worked hard not to become the class exhibit every time Earth came up. No, ma'am. Celera studied him for a moment, then advanced the lecture. A white bulb appeared on the screen. Ryan closed his eyes. You've got to be kidding me. Tessa whispered, another one? Garlic. And humans encounter it naturally? Yeah. How do you protect yourselves? Ryan looked at her. Protect ourselves? Tessa pointed toward the hazard symbol glowing beside the image. From that, Ryan almost laughed, then noticed she was completely serious. At the front of the room, Celera was explaining how the plant's sulfur compounds functioned as a chemical deterrent against predation. Ryan thought about his mother's spaghetti sauce, garlic bread at neighborhood cookouts, the little jar of garlic powder sitting beside the stove back home in Colorado. He leaned toward Tessa and lowered his voice. We eat those. Celera stopped mid-sentence. The room became so quiet Ryan could hear the ventilation system humming overhead. Tessa slowly turned toward him. You do what? Ryan suddenly wished he'd kept his mouth shut. Celera lowered her tablet. Mr. Walker, would you repeat what you just said? Ryan shifted in his chair. Humans eat them. Nobody moved. The peppers, garlic, coffee. Not tobacco exactly, but that's complicated. Solara's expression changed from disbelief to something Ryan couldn't quite read. For survival? For dinner. A student near the aisle quietly pushed his water bottle away from Ryan's side of the table. Ryan noticed. That wasn't funny. Celera looked down at her tablet, tapped rapidly through several records, then looked back at Ryan. Her voice had lost its classroom calm. Mr. Walker, these specimens all originate from the same biosphere. Ryan nodded. Earth. Celera stared at him for a long moment. Your official biological profile says nothing about this. Ryan's smile disappeared. Then your profile is wrong. Celera turned the display off. The deadly plants vanished, leaving Ryan reflected faintly in the black screen. She looked directly at him and asked the question that made every student in the room forget about the lecture. Mr. Walker, what exactly are you? Ryan spent the rest of the morning wishing Professor Vin had asked literally anything else. By lunchtime, 3 students had already found excuses to switch seats whenever he entered a room. Tessa was the exception. She followed him into the academy cafeteria, carrying her tablet like a detective who had just discovered her first real case. I need to see what you eat. Ryan stopped beside the serving counter. That might be the strangest lunch invitation I have ever gotten. I am serious. That makes it worse. He grabbed a tray and ordered the closest thing Helix Academy had to an American lunch: grilled chicken, roasted potatoes, bread, and coffee. Then he spotted a familiar red bottle in the human food section and added hot sauce. Tessa watched every choice. Coffee again. It has been a long morning. You voluntarily consume it twice in one day. Sometimes 3 times. Her fingers moved across the tablet. Ryan poured hot sauce over the chicken. Tessa froze. Stop. Ryan looked down. What? She turned the screen toward him. A red warning symbol flashed beside the chemical profile. Capsaicin. Controlled botanical irritant. Exposure limits apply. Ryan stared at her, then at his lunch. Tessa, this is cafeteria hot sauce. My dad keeps stronger stuff in his garage refrigerator. She did not smile. They found a table near the observation windows. Beyond the glass, transport ships moved between the academy towers while Ryan took his first bite. Tessa watched him chew. Could you not do that? He asked. Do what? Look at me like you are waiting for an ambulance. I am collecting observations. You are watching me eat lunch. Ryan reached for his coffee. Tessa checked another entry. Caffeine is a natural pesticide. It is also how college students survive Monday. She looked at the bread. What is on that? Garlic butter. Her face fell. Of course it is. Ryan laughed, but the sound faded when he noticed the tables around them. Students were watching. One quietly picked up his tray and moved farther away. Another whispered something into a translator. Ryan set his fork down. Back home, lunch had never required anyone to wonder whether sitting beside him was safe. For the first time since arriving at Helix, he felt less like a student and more like something behind glass. You know, he said quietly, I came 60 light years to learn about you guys. I did not expect everyone to decide I was the biology lesson. Tessa lowered her tablet. I am sorry. Ryan nodded. He believed her. Then 2 academy security officers entered the cafeteria. Their silver uniforms made conversations die table by table as they crossed the room. Ryan felt his stomach tighten. They stopped beside him. Ryan Walker? That is me. The taller officer looked at the tray. Please step away from the table. Ryan glanced at Tessa. Am I in trouble? No. The officer produced a sealed containment case. We have received an emergency xenobiological safety order. Everything on this tray must be confiscated. Ryan stared at him. You are confiscating my lunch. Your food has been identified as a potential hazardous material exposure risk. The second officer carefully lifted the hot sauce as if it might start glowing. Ryan almost made a joke. Then he saw who had entered behind them. Professor Vin stood at the cafeteria doors, pale teal face tense, holding her tablet against her chest. Beside her was a tall, silver-skinned man Ryan had never seen before. His tailored black coat carried the insignia of xenobiological safety. He watched Ryan without curiosity, without surprise, and somehow that bothered Ryan more than everyone else's fear. Professor Vin crossed the room quickly. Ryan, do not answer any questions yet. The silver-skinned man gave her a calm smile. Professor, there is no reason to alarm him. Ryan stood. Little late for that. The stranger extended one hand. Dr. Marcus Vale, Department Head for Xenobiological Safety. Ryan did not take it. Vale's smile remained perfectly polite. Mr. Walker, we need to discuss why the Academy was never told what humans can survive. Vin looked sharply at him. That information was submitted with his admission records. Vale's eyes shifted toward her. Just for a second, the smile disappeared. Ryan caught it. So did Tessa. Vin opened her tablet, searched the record, and went completely still. That is impossible. Ryan felt the room suddenly become much colder. What is? She turned the screen toward him. Entire sections of his Earth biological profile were missing. Not corrupted. Not incomplete. Removed. At the bottom of the file sat a single authorization code. Vin looked from the code to Vale. You classified it. Vale calmly buttoned his coat. Some information creates unnecessary fear. Ryan stared at him. So you lied about us? Vale met his eyes. No, Mr. Walker. His voice was almost gentle. We made you acceptable. Ryan looked at the missing sections again. You made us acceptable to who? Vale glanced around the cafeteria. Half the room was still watching. This is not an appropriate place for that conversation. Funny. It was appropriate enough to confiscate my chicken. Tessa covered what might have been a laugh with a cough. Professor Vin did not. My office. Now. 10 minutes later, the 4 of them stood inside Vin's narrow faculty office overlooking Helix Academy's botanical wing. Ryan remained near the window while Vin pulled his original admission packet from the Terran Diplomatic Archive. Unlike the Academy copy, this one was complete. She scrolled through page after page, her expression tightening. Capsaicinoids. Caffeine. Theobromine. multiple sulfur compounds, alcohol metabolism. She looked at Ryan. Your government disclosed all of this. Apparently Earth filled out the homework. Ryan nodded toward Vale. Somebody just changed the grade. Vale remained seated, hands folded neatly over one knee. I removed material that could have caused unnecessary panic. Vin turned on him. You removed medical information from a student's safety profile. I restricted it. Without my authorization. With authority above yours. That landed differently. Ryan noticed Vin stop arguing. Not because she agreed, but because she understood how high this went. Tessa leaned over the desk, reading the original file. There are hundreds of compounds here. Earth has a lot of plants, Ryan said. Some evolved chemical defenses. And humans consume them anyway? Some of them. Dose matters. Preparation matters. Biology matters. Ryan pointed toward the screen. You cannot eat everything growing in Colorado just because I drink coffee. Vale finally leaned forward. That distinction is precisely the problem. Ryan frowned. What problem? Most member species organize biological hazards into clean categories. Food, medicine, toxin. Your species does not. Neither does chemistry. Vale's eyes narrowed slightly. Ryan had finally irritated him. Vin noticed it too. Why hide the data, Marcus? She asked. Vale stood. Because humanity was applying for unrestricted access to coalition worlds. Imagine the first public report. New deathworld species routinely ingest defensive toxins for recreation. Carries hazardous plant products in personal luggage. Introduces them into shared habitats. Ryan stared at him. You were worried people would be scared of our groceries. I was worried fear would become policy before we understood you. So instead, you decided nobody should understand us. Silence settled over the office. Vale adjusted one cuff. Come with me. Ryan did not move. Where? There is something you should see. Vin stepped between them. He is not entering a laboratory. I did not say laboratory. Vale touched the wall control. The glass overlooking the botanical wing changed from transparent to a security map. Deep beneath the public greenhouse was a level Ryan had never noticed, marked with yellow quarantine symbols. Botanical Containment 7, Vale said. The Academy stores restricted flora there for comparative study. Tessa squinted at the inventory. Then her eyes widened. Those are the specimens from class. Vale nodded. Some of them. Ryan looked at the list. Coffee, peppers, garlic, cocoa. Several earth plants he recognized immediately. Then he saw the containment ratings beside them. Class 3, Class 4. One was Class 5. Things sold in ordinary grocery stores back home were sitting behind the Academy's strongest botanical quarantine. Ryan should have laughed. Instead, something about the list bothered him. I want to see them. Vin turned. Ryan, they are from my planet. If somebody is making decisions about Earth based on this collection, I want to know what they are looking at. Vale gave the smallest satisfied nod. That bothered Ryan too. 20 minutes later, a security elevator carried them below the Academy. Tessa had insisted on coming, and Vin had insisted harder. The doors opened onto a long white corridor lined with sealed observation windows. Behind the first field grew chili plants. Behind another sat coffee shrubs under artificial sunlight. Ryan walked slowly, reading labels that described pieces of home like prohibited weapons. Then he stopped. Behind the final window stood a 6-foot plant with black leaves and thin silver veins. The label beneath it read, Origin, Earth. Ryan stepped closer. That is wrong. Vale watched him carefully. Then looked from the plant to Ryan. You are certain? Ryan had spent 4 years studying terrestrial botany before coming to Helix. He knew invasive species, engineered crops, obscure mountain plants. This was none of them. That did not come from Earth. Tessa checked the database. The record says it arrived on a Terran transport 8 months ago. Ryan leaned toward the glass. A small sensor beside the plant suddenly changed from green to amber. Vale's attention snapped to the reading. Ryan saw it and understood something that made his stomach tighten. The sensor had not reacted when Vin approached. It had not reacted to Tessa. It changed when he stepped closer. Ryan backed away. The light returned to green. Nobody spoke. He stepped forward again. Amber. Vin slowly turned toward Vale. Marcus, what did you put in there? I did not put anything in there, Vale said. Vin's stare hardened. Then opened the records. Before Vale could answer, the amber sensor flashed red. A warning tone rolled through the corridor. Ryan stepped back from the glass. That seems bad. Do not move. Vince said. Thin shutters began dropping over the observation windows, sealing each chamber one after another. Tessa grabbed Ryan's sleeve. Why would a plant react to you? I was hoping one of the scientists could tell me. The lights switched to emergency blue. A mechanical voice announced, unidentified biochemical interaction detected. Containment protocol active. Heavy doors slammed shut at both ends of the corridor. Vale crossed to the nearest control panel. The system is isolating this level. Vin joined him. Override it. I am trying. Ryan looked through the narrowing gap beneath the final shutter. The blackleaf plant had changed. Its silver veins were glowing faintly, and the branches were turning toward the observation window. Not toward the lights. Toward him. Professor. Vin looked over. It is tracking me. Tessa took another step away from the glass. Plants do not track people. Ryan gave her a quick look. Some do, just usually not from across a room. A sharp hiss came from the ceiling. Vin's face changed immediately. Air circulation. Vale looked up. The containment chamber has entered purge mode. Which means? Ryan asked. It vents the chamber through the quarantine filtration system. Ryan pointed at the red sensor. And we are connected to that system? Nobody answered quickly enough. Great. Vin rushed to a yellow emergency cabinet and pulled out 3 respirator masks. There were 4 people. She handed one to Tessa, one to Ryan, then pushed the third at Vale. Vale hesitated. Take it, Vin snapped. I know the local flora better than you do. Ryan caught her wrist before she turned away and handed his mask back. No. Ryan, this is not a debate. You said the sensor reacts to me. If this thing is designed around human biology, your mask might be the difference between an inconvenience and a hospital visit. And what about you? Ryan looked through the glass. I grew up around things this academy keeps behind force fields. I am not saying that makes me bulletproof. I am saying we play the odds. Vale stared at him. That is an irrational calculation. Welcome to being scared. The ventilation fan spun up. A faint mist appeared inside the sealed plant chamber. Ryan grabbed the manual emergency lever beside the service hatch. What are you doing? Vale demanded. Stopping the airflow. That lever closes every intake on this level. It also disables environmental stabilization. For how long? Perhaps 4 minutes. Ryan pulled it. The corridor went silent. The fans died. Vale lunged toward the controls, but Vin blocked him. Leave it. The specimens will begin degrading. Then your plants can have a difficult afternoon. Tessa pointed toward a maintenance panel near the floor. There is still pressure in the secondary line. Ryan dropped beside it. The indicator was climbing. Can we shut it manually? Vin scanned the schematic. Valve room. Other side of that door. The internal security door was already closing. Ryan moved before anyone finished speaking. He sprinted down the corridor, Tessa right behind him. Stay back, he called. The opening was down to 3 feet. Ryan slid beneath it and rolled onto the other side. Tessa stopped short as the door sealed between them. Ryan, I am fine. He found the valve wheel, wrapped both hands around it, and turned. Nothing. Of course. He planted one foot against the wall and tried again. The wheel groaned, then moved. The pressure indicator began falling. On the other side of the glass, Tessa slapped both hands against the door in relief. Ryan kept turning until the gauge reached 0. The alarm stopped. For several seconds, nobody said anything. Then the security locks released. Vin reached Ryan first. You never do that again. Fair. I mean it. Also fair. Vale was not looking at Ryan. He was staring at the plant chamber. The black leaves had gone still. Vin noticed his expression. You knew it would react. Vale said nothing. Ryan walked toward him, breathing hard, but keeping his voice level. 8 months ago, that thing arrived on a Terran transport. My biological records were classified by you. Today I happened to walk into the one room where it reacts specifically to a human. Vale met his eyes. Coincidences happen. Ryan glanced at the sealed chamber, then back at him. Not that many. Vale held Ryan's gaze for several seconds, then looked toward the security camera above the corridor. This conversation is over. He touched his wrist terminal. Security will escort you back to the residential wing. Vin stepped closer. No. You are going to explain that specimen. I do not answer to faculty instructors. Then answer to the student it just identified. Vale's expression stayed controlled, but Ryan noticed his fingers tighten around the terminal. Professor Vin, you are confusing curiosity with authority. And you are confusing authority with permission. Tessa quietly moved beside the wall console while they argued. Ryan caught her eye. She tilted her tablet just enough for him to see what she had copied before the system locked them out. A shipping manifest. Ryan said nothing. Vale finally turned away. You will receive a formal explanation after the safety review. Sure, Ryan said. I will put it right next to my confiscated lunch. Vale stopped, but did not turn around. You think this is amusing because you do not understand what is at stake. Then explain it. Vale faced him. Your species crosses biological boundaries that civilized worlds spent millennia learning to respect. You consume defensive chemicals. You cultivate toxic organisms. You deliberately ferment food with microorganisms. You introduce foreign compounds into your bodies and call the result cuisine. Ryan shrugged. You should see a county fair. Bill did not smile. That attitude is exactly why Earth requires supervision. The word hit harder than Ryan expected. Supervision. Not cooperation. Not study. Ben heard it too. That is what this is really about. Vale walked toward the elevator. Go home, Professor. The doors closed behind him. Tessa waited until the elevator indicator climbed 3 levels before holding up her tablet. He is going to hate me. Ryan looked at the copied manifest. Get in line. Ven read over Tessa's shoulder. The black plant had not arrived from Earth. It had been transferred from a council research station called Horizon Laboratory, then deliberately relabeled as Terran Flora before entering Helix. More troubling was the attached project number. Ven entered it into her faculty database. Access denied. She tried again through an academic archive. One document appeared before the system began deleting results. Ryan leaned over the desk. Did that say ecological compatibility assessment? Tessa had already captured it. There is more. She opened the file. A proposal filled the screen. Recommendation: restricted biosphere designation, Sol system. Ryan read the first paragraph twice. If approved, Earth food exports would be suspended. Human travelers could face mandatory biological screening. Terran colonies would require council inspection teams. Even seeds carried between human settlements could be classified as controlled material. They want to quarantine Earth, Ryan said. Then shook her head. Not they. Marcus. His name appeared at the bottom as principal author. Tessa scrolled farther. The report is unfinished. Because he does not have enough evidence, Vince said. Ryan looked toward the sealed plant chamber. So he is making some. Nobody spoke for a moment. Then Tessa found the schedule. There is a council delegation arriving tomorrow. Ven took the tablet. Public biosafety demonstration. Main auditorium. Marcus is presenting evidence for the restricted classification. Ryan felt the pieces locked together. His altered medical profile. The fake Earth specimen. The sensor calibrated to human biology. Vale had not been surprised when the plant reacted. He had been watching for it. He knew I was going to be in Professor Ven's class, Ryan said. Tessa looked up. You think the lecture was arranged? I think my lunch getting confiscated made a great story. Human student casually carries hazardous substances through a mixed species campus. Then tomorrow Vale shows the council a mysterious Earth organism that reacts to humans. Vin's face went still. He turns ordinary human biology into evidence of contamination risk. Ryan stared through the observation glass at the black leaves. Back home, his biggest problem a few months earlier had been deciding whether he could afford another semester away from Colorado. Now somebody wanted to use his existence to put a warning label around an entire planet. We take this to the Terran embassy tonight. Vin shook her head. We have suspicion and copied files obtained from a restricted system. Vale will bury it before morning. Then what do we do? Tessa asked. Vin looked at the demonstration schedule. Ryan already knew the answer, and he hated how obvious it was. We let him do it. Tessa stared at him. Ryan, that sounds like a terrible plan. It is. He took the tablet from her and read the final line of Vale's schedule. Human subject confirmation required. Ryan felt the last trace of humor leave him. Vale did not merely expect him at tomorrow's demonstration. He needed him there. Ryan handed the tablet back. Good news. We finally know what he wants. Vin looked at him. And the bad news? Ryan glanced once more at the plant that had awakened only when he came near. Tomorrow, I am going to give him the chance to get it. Ryan slept for maybe 2 hours. By 7 the next morning, he was standing in a restroom outside Helix Academy's main auditorium, staring at himself in the mirror and wondering when studying alien plants had become the dumbest decision of his life. His hands were cold. He rubbed them together, then stopped when he realized he had been doing it for nearly a minute. "You can still leave," Vin said from the doorway. Ryan looked at her reflection. "And Vale tells the council the human ran when asked to prove he was safe. That is better than becoming part of his experiment." "I know." Ryan turned on the faucet, splashed water over his face, and reached for a towel. "That is what makes this such a lousy choice." Then stepped inside. Tessa copied everything. "If Vale changes the demonstration protocol, we document it and stop immediately." Ryan nodded. "Immediately? I mean it." "So do I." 10 minutes later, the auditorium doors opened. Hundreds of delegates filled the curved rows, with Academy officials seated near the front. At center stage stood a transparent botanical enclosure containing the black leaf specimen. Vale waited beside it in a dark formal coat, calm as ever. "Mr. Walker," he said, "thank you for volunteering." Ryan stopped. "I did not volunteer." A few delegates looked up. Vale smiled. "Of course." Poor choice of words. Ryan walked to the marked position 20 feet from the enclosure. Ven remained near the control station. Tessa sat in the front row with her tablet already recording. Vale addressed the council. "Yesterday, this specimen demonstrated a unique biochemical response to human proximity. Today we will determine whether that response represents an ecological compatibility risk." Ryan looked at the plant. "You mean whether your fake Earth plant recognizes me?" Murmurs moved through the room. Vale did not flinch. "The specimen's disputed origin will be addressed separately." He activated the enclosure. The silver veins brightened. A monitor displayed rising chemical activity. Ryan stayed where he was. "Human subject at 20 feet, Vale announced. "Response confirmed." Ven checked her console. "Air system remains isolated." As agreed. Vale moved Ryan to 15 feet. Then 10. The readings climbed. Ryan could feel every eye in the auditorium following him. At 6 feet, the plant's leaves unfolded. Tessa suddenly stood. "Professor Ven." Ven looked down. A new line had appeared on her console. "Secondary dispersal sequence armed." "Marcus, stop the demonstration." Vale continued speaking. "Observe the specimen's escalating response." I said stop. Ven reached for the emergency control. Her screen locked. Vale had overridden her authorization. Ryan backed away. "That was not part of the plan." "No," Vale said quietly. "It was not part of yours." The enclosure vents opened. A faint cloud entered the sealed chamber around the plant. Ryan's stomach dropped. Tessa rushed toward the control station, but 2 security officers stepped into her path. "Stay seated, please." "He changed the protocol," she shouted. Ven tried another terminal. Locked. "Marcus, you are exposing a student without consent." Vale finally looked at her. "I am demonstrating precisely why uncontrolled deathworld biology cannot be trusted." Ryan turned toward the exit. The auditorium doors sealed. A warning light came on above them. Vale had locked down the entire room. That was the reversal Ryan had not expected. Vale was not trying to prove Ryan dangerous by making the plant react. He was trying to create an incident large enough that nobody would care how it started. "You need everyone here to think Earth contaminated your specimen," Ryan said. Vale's polite expression returned. "I need the council to see what happens when incompatible biospheres meet." The plant's silver veins flared brighter. A second monitor came alive, showing a compound Ryan did not recognize spreading through the enclosure system. Ven did. Her face lost color. "Ryan, get away from the ventilation ports." He moved, but a sharp chemical smell had already reached him. His chest tightened. Not dramatically, just enough to scare him. His pulse jumped. Vale watched the medical monitor instead of Ryan. That told Ryan everything. "You knew this would affect me." Vale said nothing. Ryan took another careful breath and looked across the auditorium at Tessa. She was terrified, but her tablet was still recording. Good. Ryan steadied himself against the control rail. Vale had finally made his mistake. He had stopped hiding what he wanted. Ven slammed her palm against the emergency release. Nothing happened. "Ryan, listen to me. We have to shut down that dispersal system manually." Ryan looked toward the service access beside the enclosure. A red light flashed above it. Vale followed his gaze. "Do not." Ryan took one slow breath. "Yesterday you wanted to know what humans can survive." He stepped toward the access panel. "Today you get to learn what we do when somebody crosses the line." Ryan reached the service panel before Vale could stop him. His fingers felt clumsy, and every breath came a little shorter than the one before it. but the engineering diagram printed beside the hatch was simple enough. Intake, circulation, emergency bypass. Machines did not care what planet you came from. Ryan, the blue control, Vin called. Quarter turn clockwise, then pull. Vale stepped toward her. Professor Vin, you will cease assisting him. Vin did not even look over. No. Ryan almost smiled. He turned the control. Nothing happened. It is locked. Tessa was still trapped behind the security officers, staring at her tablet. Electronic lockout. Vale has administrator control. Can you break it? Ryan asked. Not without authorization. Then borrow some. Tessa understood immediately. She raised her voice toward the council delegates. Who here has senior biosafety authority? An elderly delegate in the front row lifted one hand. I do. Vale's composure finally cracked. Remain seated. The delegate looked at him. Dr. Vale, you have sealed a public auditorium during an unauthorized exposure event. I believe I will stand. Tessa hurried over and held out her tablet. Place your identification here. The security officers hesitated. They had been following Vale's orders. Now half the council was watching them. The delegate pressed his hand to the screen. Ryan's service panel flashed green. Got it, Tessa shouted. Ryan pulled the bypass. The ventilation system gave a deep mechanical thump, then shut down. The chemical smell stopped getting stronger. Ryan leaned against the wall and concentrated on breathing slowly. Then crossed the stage toward him. Sit down. In a minute. That was not a suggestion. Ryan sat. Vale moved toward the main console. Tessa saw him first. He is deleting the logs. Then spun around. Vale's fingers moved across the controls. One by one, the experiment records disappeared from the central display. Marcus, he did not stop. This demonstration has been compromised. The data is invalid. The data is evidence, Vince said. Not anymore. Vale entered a final command. The main screen went black. For one terrible second, Ryan thought Vale had actually done it. Then Tessa started laughing. It was not a big laugh. More the nervous sound of someone who had just realized the other person had made a spectacular mistake. Vale looked at her. What is amusing? She lifted her tablet. You deleted the Academy copy. Vale went still. I have been recording everything locally since yesterday. She turned toward the delegates. Including the original specimen manifest, Professor Vin's locked controls, the dispersal sequence, and Dr. Vale overriding the emergency shutdown. The auditorium erupted into voices. Vale recovered quickly. A student's private recording proves nothing about the biological danger posed by Earth. Ryan looked up. There it was. Even cornered, Vale still had somewhere to run. He is right, Ryan said. Vin stared at him. Ryan. About that part. He stood carefully. His breathing was improving, but his legs still felt unsteady. We can prove what he did to me. That does not prove his whole argument about Earth is false. Vale seized the opening. Exactly. Humanity carries biochemical tolerances unlike any established member species. Their foods are hazardous. Their microorganisms are poorly understood. Their biosphere presents an unprecedented contamination risk. Several delegates murmured agreement. Ryan hated that Vale still sounded reasonable. That was what made him dangerous. Vin walked to the botanical enclosure and studied the chemical monitor. Then perhaps we should examine the evidence you chose. Vale's eyes sharpened. Vin enlarged the compound analysis. This substance was designed to trigger a human respiratory response. She opened another file. But the plant producing it is not terrestrial. Tessa added the shipping manifest beside it. Orison Laboratory. Vale's research station. Ryan watched the room understand the implication. Vale had created the danger, labeled it Earth, and then arranged for a human to react to it. You wanted a monster, Ryan said quietly. So you built one and put our name on it. Vale looked around at the council. His voice remained controlled. Because without restrictions, Earth will eventually prove me right. Ryan stood face to face with him now. No shouting, no threat, just the question that had been bothering him since the cafeteria. You knew this could hurt me. Vale answered after a long pause. One human was an acceptable risk if it protected thousands of worlds. Ryan nodded once. Then you should have volunteered. The room went silent. 2 council security officers entered through the newly released doors, but before they reached Vale, every screen in the auditorium suddenly lit up red. Tessa looked at her tablet. Her relief vanished. Ryan. What now? She turned the display toward him. Vale's deleted command had done more than erase files. It had transmitted the fabricated contamination report directly to the Galactic Biosafety Council. Across the screen, one line appeared beneath the seal of emergency authority. Restricted biosphere vote, Earth. Voting begins in 60 minutes. For the next 10 seconds, nobody in the auditorium cared about Marcus Vale. Every eye went to the countdown. 59 minutes. 58. Ryan read the notice twice, hoping exhaustion had made him misunderstand it. It had not. If the council approved the emergency classification, Earth exports would freeze immediately, human travel permits would be suspended, and every Terran colony outside the Sol system would fall under mandatory biological inspection. Vale had built himself a final escape route. Even if he lost his position, his accusation could become law before anyone finished investigating him. "Can we stop the vote?" Ryan asked. The elderly biosafety delegate shook his head. "Only by disproving the emergency basis before deliberation closes." Tessa looked at the clock. "In less than an hour?" 57 minutes, Ryan said. "Thanks for making it worse." Vin was already moving through Vale's research files. "We do not need to prove Earth harmless. No biosphere is harmless. We need to prove his classification model is dishonest." Vale, now standing between two council security officers, gave a tired smile. "My conduct changes nothing. Human food remains toxic to other species." Ryan looked at him. "And your food is probably toxic to somebody." Vale said nothing. Ryan turned to Vin. "That is the mistake, is it not?" She stopped scrolling. Ryan continued. "He keeps treating toxicity like a property of the plant. But it is a relationship between the compound, the dose, and the organism." Vin's eyes widened. "Exactly." Tessa pulled up the Academy database. Within minutes, the main screen filled with ordinary foods from dozens of member worlds. A thalassin cooking oil caused severe reactions in 3 avian species. A popular valerian tea contained compounds dangerous to aquatic delegates. Even Tessa's favorite blue fruit carried proteins humans were advised not to eat. The auditorium grew quieter with every example. Ryan pointed toward the display. "Nobody quarantined those planets." The elderly delegate leaned forward. "Because cross-species dietary restrictions are considered normal." "Then Earth is not breaking the rule," Ryan said. "Earth is being punished for having a longer ingredient list." Vin opened the original Terran admission file, and humanity disclosed that list. The complete records appeared beside Vale's edited version. Dates, chemical profiles, medical warnings, import restrictions. Earth had hidden nothing. Vale had removed the context, then used the missing context as evidence that humans were unpredictable. Tessa found one more file. "Professor, look at this." It was Vale's first draft of the restriction proposal, dated 11 months earlier. Ryan had not even arrived at Helix then. The recommendation to quarantine Earth already existed. The experiment had never been designed to answer a question. It had been designed to justify an answer Vale had chosen beforehand. That broke whatever support remained in the room. Council delegates began withdrawing their preliminary endorsements one after another. Vale finally raised his voice. "You are ignoring the central issue. Humans deliberately consume defensive chemicals." Ryan faced him. "Yes." The room settled. "We roast things. We boil them. We ferment them. We dilute them. We breed plants until they become safer. Sometimes we use the same compound as food at one dose and medicine at another. Sometimes we avoid it completely." He glanced at the black specimen behind the enclosure. "That is not proof we contaminate everything we touch. It is proof we grew up somewhere complicated." Vin replaced Vale's report with an image of Earth. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds. "Humanity did not evolve above its biosphere," she said. "It evolved inside an unusually competitive one." Ryan thought of Colorado, his mother's garden, his father's ridiculous hot sauce collection, coffee before class. Things so ordinary he had never considered that another civilization might see them as evidence of something extraordinary. "We did not beat Earth," Ryan said. "We learned what could hurt us, what could help us, and how often the difference was just knowing what you were doing." The countdown reached 11 minutes. The elderly delegate received a message and stood. "The emergency recommendation has lost the required support. The vote is canceled pending investigation." Tessa dropped back into her seat, then closed her eyes for half a second. Ryan simply exhaled. Vale stared at the image of Earth as council security escorted him toward the doors. Before leaving, he looked back. They will fear you eventually. Ryan considered that. Maybe. Then he nodded toward the fabricated plant. But next time, let us give them something real to be afraid of. Vale disappeared through the doors. Tessa walked over carrying Ryan's confiscated cafeteria bag, somehow recovered during the chaos. She pulled out the sealed bottle of hot sauce. I have one question. Ryan eyed her suspiciously. That sentence has caused me enough trouble this week. She held up the bottle. If this is considered mild on Earth, what do humans consider dangerously spicy? Ryan smiled for the first time all morning. That is a much better question. 3 weeks later, Ryan walked into advanced xenobotany carrying a fresh cup of coffee, and nobody moved away from him. That was how he knew things had changed. Tessa had even saved him a seat near the front, although she had placed a bright yellow sticker on his desk that read human food parking only. Ryan looked at it. Very mature. It is a safety precaution. You drew a coffee cup with a skull on it. Educational materials should be memorable. Ryan sat down, smiling despite himself. The investigation into Marcus Vale was still underway, but his authority had been suspended, the false Earth classification had been formally withdrawn, and every biological record he had altered was being restored. More importantly, the Council had adopted a simple new rule. No species could be classified as dangerous merely because its normal biology differed from someone else's. Professor Venn entered carrying a stack of tablets. The conversations faded. Behind her, the classroom display activated with a new course heading, Adaptive Biology of Earth. Ryan stared at it. That is new. Venn set the tablets down. So was discovering that half my curriculum was written by people who had never visited the planet they were describing. A few students laughed. Today, she continued, we are going to correct that. The first image appeared. A mushroom. Ryan recognized it immediately. Venn described its chemistry, then looked at him. Edible? Absolutely not. Tessa visibly relaxed. Finally, the next image showed a cluster of bright berries. Also no, Ryan said. Another plant appeared. Definitely no. Tessa leaned back with satisfaction. See? Earth has rules. Plenty of them. Venn advanced to another image. Ryan hesitated. Tessa noticed. Why did you hesitate? Because that one is technically poisonous. Her eyes widened. Technically, people still eat it after preparing it correctly. Tessa slowly put her tablet down. Your planet was doing so well. The class laughed, including Ryan. That mattered more than he expected. They were laughing with him now, not watching him like an exhibit. Venn waited for the room to settle. There is a lesson here larger than botany. When this course began, we treated danger as though it were universal. We assumed that if something frightened us, any creature comfortable around it must be frightening too. She looked around the room. That assumption nearly became law. Ryan stopped smiling. He remembered the sealed auditorium, the countdown, and the strange feeling of seeing his entire planet reduced to a warning label. Venn continued. Science is supposed to make the unfamiliar understandable. Fear does the opposite. Fear takes what we do not understand and fills the empty space with whatever frightens us most. Tessa glanced at Ryan. That sounds like something humans would put on a coffee mug. We probably already have. After class, Ryan stayed behind to help Venn reorganize the Earth specimens. The black plant was gone, transferred into council custody along with Vale's research files. In its place stood an ordinary pepper plant under warm artificial light. Small red peppers hung beneath its leaves. Venn studied it. I still find it difficult to believe your species looked at a plant producing a chemical specifically intended to discourage consumption and decided to make the sensation stronger. Ryan picked up his backpack. Human history has a lot of decisions that make more sense after you meet humans. She smiled. I am beginning to understand that. At the door, Tessa was waiting. She held a tiny bottle of hot sauce she had legally purchased from the human market after completing the Academy's new cross-species food safety course. Ryan. No, I have not asked anything yet. I know that look. She held up the bottle. One drop. Ryan considered warning her again, then pointed toward the label. Read the instructions. Start smaller than you think. Keep water nearby. Tessa nodded seriously. You are not going to stop me? Ryan opened the door. That would miss the point. She followed him into the hallway. Ryan looked through the tall academy windows toward the stars. Somewhere beyond them was Colorado, his parents, his mother's garden, his father's ridiculous refrigerator full of hot sauce, and a world the galaxy had almost condemned because it looked dangerous from far away. Maybe that was the part worth remembering. People were always going to meet something unfamiliar and feel afraid. The important question was what came next. You could build a wall around what scared you, give it a frightening name, and spend your life proving your first impression right. Or you could get closer, ask better questions, and discover that something strange was not necessarily something hostile. Sometimes it was simply somebody else's version of home.